So guys, start again. Alessandro, Isabella, thank you so much for talking to Auto Review in advance. Obviously, we lost a little bit of time, so we're just going to shoot ahead with the questions. So, firstly, Isabella,
Yeah.
um, can you maybe talk about a bit about how you got into acting? What was that like for you, or why? Just maybe
Why?
why?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been acting ever since I could walk, pretty much. So, when I was little, my mum put me into one of those like free acting group things after school. And then I was kind of hooked from there, really. Just did loads of like shows, etc. Was in dance school, a couple of dance schools. And then at university, I went to Sussex University and I did drama and English. So my course was quite collaborative, so it was more about writing and directing theatre. And then out of that, I formed like a theatre company and we were a production company as well. And then alongside, I had quite a few mates who were young directors. So often they would get me on board with like music videos or short films. So yeah, I kind of was more unconventional in my approach. I didn't actually do a formal drama school. I did apply after university, but they didn't let me in. So yeah, so then I just gave up with that and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to make my own work. Went via that route. And then after about a year after uni, I got an agent and then I started doing like some more TV whilst touring my shows. And that's it really. So I come to acting in a more experimental way, I'd say. It's less direct. But since I've done a couple of like courses and things, and I'm always interested in doing workshops and like furthering myself. Even, as I start to hopefully get bigger in my career and I get better roles, I think there's always work to be done, which I think is the kind of beauty of performing. But yeah, always have loved performing, and movement and all the rest. So definitely it's kind of inbuilt in me. I don't think I can stop it, sadly, even if I
No,
want to.
it's a good thing because you're good at it. So,
Oh, thank you.
keep going.
Thank you. That's pretty sweet.
So the same question for you, Alessandra. What made you decide to become an actor?
So I'm Nigerian, and Nigerians are very dramatic people. No, growing up, I loved films. I literally just love films. I love the escapism of the movies. To this day, there's nothing I love more than going to the cinema with a massive box of popcorn that's like too big for me and just throughout a film, just literally being sucked in. Growing up, Jim Carrey, Tom Cruise, Will Smith, Nicolas Cage, Jack Nicholson, all of these films, all these dudes, they just like Keanu Reeves. I used to just get lost in the cinema. And my dad used to like let me, there was a rule in my house growing up. It was this: if you can stay quiet, I'll let you stay up as late as you want. Not good, but that was the rule. And so I used to just stay quiet and watch films with my dad. So I'd watch my filmography in my mind was massive by the time I was just like 11. I'd seen so many films. Anyway, I was also very talkative. So my mum, she understood that, he's got a lot of energy for communication. So she put me in drama school, a place where that could be used. And, I was just doing lots of different drama school kind of clubs throughout, as a result of my mum paying for them throughout primary school, throughout secondary school, so much so that I didn't even do GCSE drama because I did so much outside of school. And then I remember I got to sixth form and a teacher of mine was like, I was actually going to be a lawyer. So I'd started like applying to do law in universities. And one of my drama teachers, she saw me doing my UCAS application. She said, wait, what are you applying for? I said, law. She went, no. She said, you don't even give homework in on time. Laura is very administrative. She said, you are an actor, you're an artist, so you should apply for drama school. So I did. And then I ended up going to the Arts University of Bournemouth, which was really cool because, got out of London. I didn't want to go to a London school. I wanted to my dad advised me to expand my horizons. And then finished that, came back to East London where I grew up, born and raised. And my mum gave me money for Casting Call Pro when I was 21, or as is now known, Mandy Actors. And then my career just went from there, from like little fringe productions, fringe theatre, to sort of like doing big theatre shows, winning an Olivier Award, then getting cast in Top Boy, then getting cast in, like, from that I got cast in some Guy Ritchie films, did an ITV series. But the thing is, I've always loved fringe and indie work more than anything else. I'm so thankful for all my opportunities. But the thing I love about fringe theatre and indie film work is that you tell the most interesting stories and play the most interesting characters because you're not boxed in. You know, often mainstream work can put you in a box. You don't necessarily do your most explorative work. The beautiful thing about indie and fringe is that it gives you opportunities to play like these kind of niche, you know, in between lines characters that really allow you to explore what it is to be human. And so my love for indie film and fringe theatre is undying, and I will do it for the rest of my life. So yeah, that's how I got into it, and that's what I loved about doing this film as well.
Cool, wonderful. So let's talk about the film. Izabella, you play the lead.
Yes.
Can you tell us what you like about this character and what were perhaps the challenges and the joys?
So what I like or love, I think, about the character is her strength and resilience. And she's a fighter, but she's quite a quiet character. So when you watch the film, you're going to notice that she's not loud and outspoken and shouty. Okay, there's moments where there's fire and tension, but there's something quite reflective about her. And I think when me and Philip came to the role together, so actually it was originally a short film that Philip pitched to me many a moon ago. And when we met to chat about it, we kind of came to this complexity of the character, I think a bit together actually, which is that she goes in the ring, she fights, and there's, yeah, that innate power. But there's also power in her, like, ability to sit back and survey the situations and be able to take control of them in a way that's quite different to how she fights. Like, I think the whole situation with having a baby, an unexpected pregnancy, and bringing up a baby in that environment, you've got to be like silently powerful. And I think that's something about the character that I really love. And I think also, just as a woman, sometimes, and not so much nowadays, but I think there's some roles that have been written for the position of a mother or a mum, and I think they can be quite stereotypical, and there's things in them that, you know, it's like it's not like too emotional, but like there's emotion here, but it's not in the way that you would expect. And I think that's something really interesting. And I think the fighting world definitely complexifies that. I do think the challenges of the role were certainly physical. You know, I'm not naturally a fighter. I'm actually more a dancer. That's kind of how I trained, you know, many a moon ago, but that's my physique. I'm a bar instructor, so, you know, kind of more like a lean figure. But there's obviously ways that you approach a role as an actress or an actor, which means you embody a certain element of something and you can make it more believable in just the way that you move and kind of, yeah, that your dynamic and the intensity you bring. And I think that's something I really learned on this, because the whole way through I was a little bit worried. I was like, oh, Philip, like I'm a bit slim, I'm a bit skinny. And I remember my instructor, well, my kickboxing instructor, it was kind of like a PT that, you know, trained me up for it. And he said, but fighters all look quite different, actually. And he said, it's how you carry yourself that will make people believe you, and it's not about your physique. And I think that's a really strong thing to take away. And yeah, I love that about, you know, coming to the role. But yeah, I do think with the role generally, with Grażyna, she's a layered character. And I think that to me is what I love. And I think especially as a woman, like, playing a character that has a few layers and also can not be perfect. Like, I think that's a really interesting thing. And the idea of motherhood not being perfect and it not coming about in a perfect way, I think that gave me a lot to go on with the character. And like, I really enjoyed playing that. Like, a lot of my work that I made when I was at university for like many years was about female body image, and kind of like what you were saying, Alessandro, the work I created in fringe and in theatres and in, you know, much kind of technically smaller stuff, I think that brings you the energy for these roles when you get to them. You know, it gives you that edge and that hunger to find something like a bit more deep with the character. But yeah, it was definitely in a way an easy character to find depth with, but there were definitely challenges with that.
Wonderful.
Your question.
And what would you say was the main challenges about getting the technique, the fighting technique,
Yeah.
combining that with that? Because I could see with your character that element of when she's in the ring, she's really fierce, and then coming off, she was seen very, you know, it's not subdued, but like she was a silent soul, kind of like really deep in herself and thought, you know, a thinker, and just like any other, you know, woman or, you know, young woman of, you know, who was basically just coming into fighting. There wasn't that big, you know, boisterous persona. Yeah, I could see that. So was the challenges the training perhaps,
Yeah.
and then the character?
I think the training took me much more out of my comfort zone. Like I've always loved playing kind of more intricate or more emotional characters, or characters that have, you know, something going on underneath the surface. Like I really enjoy playing someone who's a bit hard to read. Like I think that's a really fun role to play, and I do think that is who she is. So yeah, the technical side was for sure a challenge. Also because I was actually thrown into the ring for the first fight scene only a few months after I started training. Like genuinely, I think it was 2 or 3 months, and we landed this gig at this fight night, and they said, "Yeah, you can come film." And Philip was like, "All right, let's do it." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is wild." But what was amazing in all of that, and I think I mentioned it before, you know, we started the interview, that I had Roxana Begum, who's a twice world champion, to fight with, but she was also my co-star, Ruth as well. And they gave me a lot of guidance. And I remember in that first fight night, Roxana was incredible. Like she just gave me a couple of pointers. But you know, I had the training, but I don't think there's anything more useful than a real fighter telling you how to behave or how to be. And she gave me this pep talk before we went out to the ring, because we basically filmed it between the actual fights that were happening. So it was in the interval. And I was like, this is wild. But I like channeled my immersive theatre energy. I've done a million immersive theatre shows, and I was like, this is an immersive theatre show. That's what we're doing here. Like that's what I'm going to be. That's what we're doing. But then Roxana took me aside and she was like, right, I'm going to talk to you like you're a fighter. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to give you the spiel that I would get. And it was basically all about being super calm. She was like, don't hype yourself up, sit down. I was like, okay. She's like, sit down, don't do anything. She said, you need to get really calm. She's like, you need to get that calm, quiet confidence. You're not jumping around and like, you know, throwing punches. She said, you're doing none of that. You need to just go out like super stoic and, you know, in yourself. And that was amazing. Like, I don't think I could have got anything more kind of authentic than that. So yeah, she was a hero in that moment.
Wonderful. And Alessandro, your character, there's two facets to it. Obviously, he comes in as the love interest for Izabella of sorts because he's married. Um, and can you talk about on that character and also the very obvious fact that he was also a Muslim? And I mean, Philip was telling me that's also something that you are as well, a practicing Muslim. So tell me how you felt about playing that character and the representation.
I loved it. I loved it. You know, um, so what I loved about playing the character was that he's human. He's just a human being. You know, there's no such thing as, you know, what is a Muslim like? You know, what is a Christian like? What is a Hindu like? What is it? They're just human beings who have a relationship with a faith that is practiced, but but each and every person within that is still just as unique as people you find in a pub, on a golf course, you know, anywhere, like in a wrestling, you can be a Muslim cook, you can be a Muslim fighter, you can be a Muslim dustbin man, you can be a Muslim adulterer, gambler, homosexual, anything, you know, like people are people. And what I loved about, you know, the character is that obviously being Muslim in real life, it felt lovely to be able to represent Muslims on screen. No, not Muslims on screen, but just the fact that Muslims are just human beings. That's what felt beautiful for me. You know, I don't know how I'd feel about somebody saying, can you play this character who's really perfect and pious? Or can you play this Muslim character who wants to join Hamas? Do you know what I mean? Like there's really stereotypical ways of seeing people where actually when you remove all the extremes, each and every person is an extreme in and of themselves because we are unique. Uniqueness is extremity. You know what I mean? Because you are extremely you. And for me, that's what I think is powerful about the opportunity that Philip gave me, this character. It's just that he is extremely him. And so my job as an actor was to bring him to life, you know, in as non-stereotypical, in as oh, that seems very Islamic, or that seems very fightery, that seems very black guy. It's just, no, this is a human being who's in these circumstances. And he's being affected by very human things, attraction, conflict, inner conflict. You know, he's married, but he's fallen for this woman. He has sexual desires, but he's got to hold on to them because he's married. He's a fighter, so he's egotistical, but actually the complex situation he's in has made him feel very emotional and vulnerable. He has a child that he dearly loved, but he still did this. All these contradictions are what make humans humans. And I think what's so great about Philip is that it's the way he's so happy to explore these contradictions without being on the nose about it. There's no scene where the character goes, you know, there's a part of the Quran that says I shouldn't do this, and
Yeah.
I want to do. There's none of that. It's just it exists in life. Life is so full of contradictions. Electricity and water don't mix, and yet both of them are natural elements that are crucial for existence. So for me, being able to just play a character and just have their contradictions just exist as a part of the character's natural life was beautiful. And also fighting, man, is like, I think what's so good about the fact that this film deals with fighting so much is that it's not just the fighting in the ring, but it's also the fighting, as I said, of the inner conflict of the characters. It's very primal. And the fact that the characters do fight, it brings out this kind of animalism in human beings. We are all animals as humans. So there's something so incredible about putting the fact that they're fighters alongside these complex situations that they are fighting outside of the ring. It's the survival. It's the survival in the ring and the attempt to survive all of these complex life situations they come up against. And I think my character really sums it up. He's a supporting role, but the great films, each supporting character has their own thing that they're dealing with. But it's held together by the beautiful character that is Isabella's character.
And Izabella, did you feel pressure in terms of playing the lead? Is this your first lead role? So
Yeah,
did you feel the pressure of that being the lead character, and how did you deal with that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's my first lead role in a feature, so that was huge. And yeah, I guess you can call it pressure. I guess also with this though, what maybe took away, it's not even took away that pressure, but made me use it in a really powerful way was the fact that the role was so physical and what Alessandro was saying about the layers of the film and the fact that it's an indie film. I think it makes you throw yourself at it with guts and you feel, I mean, obviously I haven't done, a huge role in a huge movie, but like, if we want to call it that, but like, I think there's something that it makes you get into it in a way that's like deeper and more exciting without feeling the pressure in a way. I mean, as I said before, I definitely felt pressure, in some of the fight moments and moments like that. But in the actual scenes, like the more intimate scenes and the emotional scenes, and there's a few that me and Alessandro have together, like I just love those moments. It was so fun to play it. Like there's definitely that's the kind of scenes that you wait for as an actor. You're like, oh yeah, that's got something to it.
Yeah.
And I love that, what you're saying is completely bang on, is like about the imperfection of the character, the fact they're just humans trying to get through something. And there's a couple of scenes, and I won't mention them here for like various reasons, but they're so multifaceted, and I think that's a really important and exciting moment, like as an actor when you're taking a character. So yeah, definitely it was definitely at moments overwhelming, but like I definitely thoroughly loved those scenes that we got to have. And as a lead, I mean, getting to carry the whole thread is huge, and it's so exciting. So yeah.
And for you, what would be your takeaway? If you had one takeaway from making this movie, what would that be?
For me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Oh my goodness, one takeaway. Face your fears. I think my fear is always to do something I don't know. And I always have like an imposter syndrome when I take on something that, I don't particularly feel like I'm the most skilled person for that. So let's say fighting. But also knowing that I can get there and I will get there and I'll take it in a different route and approach. And I'll give the stuff that I do know to make the stuff that I don't know make sense as an actor. And I think that's kind of, for me, that's what acting is often about. You're like, I've done this before, I've never done that before. Right. Let's try and make this character believable and make sense and get to be the thing that you want it to be. But yeah, I don't know, throw yourself in the deep end, I guess all of that. Like it really was all those things. So yeah.
Alessandro, thank you. Alessandro, what would you say?
Sorry, let me just think. The biggest takeaway from this movie, I would say, is that it was just an extremely invigorating process. I it's easy to, when people kind of say like in a very kind of cliche, "Oh, I really enjoyed filming that," but I really just felt it was invigorating. It was an invigorating experience, you know, each scene, you know, the way Philip works, you know, because he really lets you as an actor, he lets you try things and lets you be, but then he's there to steadily guide you so that you stay within the right parameters. So you feel free, but you also feel very protected as an artist. And then, you know, working with Izabella as well, you know, I'm not a fighter either, but like, she had this fire in her eyes when we do our scenes that just made me kind of you know, it was invigorating. So, you know, that's the biggest thing I'll say, that it really kind of it in a way it relit my passion for making, for actually, you know, performing in film. I love film, I love watching it, and I do love acting, but sometimes there can be a tediousness to film that can mean that you don't necessarily feel impassioned throughout the filming process. And I genuinely felt impassioned throughout this filming process, so much so that there was one day on set that we'd been impassioned for so much of the day that I got too tired to keep filming. Do you remember that day, Isabella, where we said, "Philip, dude, I can't do this," because it's been such an impact. The day was so passionate in terms of the scenes, that everything, that I felt like, dude, I'm actually out of, like, the passion has drained me today. I can't carry on going today. But that's a positive thing, because that's how much, you know, I enjoyed it. So yeah, I'll say my biggest takeaway is that this film was invigorating, because it both the primal elements and the professional elements, really, I got to indulge in both. I felt like a professional actor, but I also felt like a child running through a forest, you know, just being a wild child. And those two things, you know, that really is what makes me love this art form. So yeah.
Wonderful. And then just finally, to both of you, why should anyone come out and see the film?
Well, first of all, I think we have to support indie film, and I don't mean to say that in such a, you know, like overarching way, but I think it's really important. I think it's the heart and soul of why we make stuff. What Alessandro just said, I really strongly agree with, in that often filmmaking can be a very tedious process, and it's very true. It's very technical. People put a lot of time and energy into these things. This film, no doubt, had an insanely dedicated cast and crew behind it. I mean, the camera team I've got, you know, hold my hat to them. They did some extraordinary things and pushed through like some extraordinary times. So on that fact alone, you know, I think in trying times for like film, it's really important that we support things like this. But I also think, aside from that, which is, you know, I guess my more political spiel about film, I think it's a really enjoyable story, and I think it's genuinely enjoyable watch. And invigorating is the word. I agree with Alessandro, and I do think that translates into the screenplay itself. And I think it does bring a different energy. It brings something, yeah, a little bit more unique. And it you know, it appeals to the fighting side, I think, to those people who are like into that world, but it appeals to the emotional and the human connection. And I think anything that can do that for me is a film worth watching.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and do you want to add anything to that, Alessandro, or do you think you said your...
I would say everything she said, and I'll just say that also, you know, there is nothing more exciting for me in film than being taken into a different world. Not just through literally watching the film, but also, I don't know about the MMA world. I don't know about this world. I don't know about, you know, what Polish familial culture is like. I don't know about these worlds. I don't know how Polish siblings relate to each other. I don't know how, like, Polish siblings who are in the world of MMA fighting, which I think is very popular in that part of the world, how that affects their relationship. I don't know how, you know, I don't know those worlds. And actually, I think what's exciting is, you know, as we live in this world, there are so many worlds within our world. And what is lovely about film is that it can take you into one of those little worlds. Like, for example, you know, the film Whiplash, you get taken into the world of like students in jazz and like the pressure of that world. Or like, you know, Black Swan, you get taken into the world of ballet. This world takes you into the world of MMA fighting. But remember, within that world is just a bunch of humans as there are in every other world. So understanding what the pressures of that world are and how they affect what it is to be human. And then, you know, those convergent paths of like Islam and, you know, the Polish cultural values and the actual world of fighting, and then literally just the humans and, you know, men and women and how they relate to each other and family and all this stuff. It's amazing to see how being human is different in this particular world. And that's why I would say come and watch the film, because you get to see what it is to be human in a unique world that you probably know nothing about beyond the posters of fighters looking ripped. You know what I mean? So yeah, come on.